Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Your Real, Your Ideal podcast. Sandy, how are you doing today?
You know, will I ever say I'm doing bad? We're both such positive people. But Friday, we record on Friday mornings, not to throw everybody off, but we record on Friday mornings, and Friday mornings are kind of a beautiful thing. And it's a great way
I
to finish off the week.
I completely agree. I feel like Friday morning, I always called Fridays my fun day because I either do volunteer stuff, I try to connect with a friend on Friday. Like today, I'm doing lunch with a friend. We're doing our podcast on Fridays. I do a little bit of work in the morning typically, but then from 10 a.m. on, it's all fun. A couple of Fridays ago, I went and played golf. Like it's like my day to connect and do volunteer stuff, a bunch of different things. So I like Fridays.
So going back to our episode on the fear of no, I really have to tell myself when a client calls and it's like a Wednesday and they say, well, can you do a call on Friday or should we book it? And my gut reaction is, oh, my Friday's open. And it's just like, Sandy, do not do it.
Mhm.
You do not have to say yes because truly your calendar is not open. Your calendar is open for you and not for everybody else.
Yeah. The good point. I have a client who likes Friday afternoons. And thankfully, we only meet like once a quarter. So it's not too much, but it is one of those every time I schedule with him, it's a little bit like, oh, do I do this? I'm like, all right, it's okay. Once a quarter, I give up my Friday afternoon. But anyway, yes, I completely understand having those boundaries around that's very helpful. Okay. So today we're talking about core values. We dug into it last week. And I will tell you, when I was re listening to it, it was really a good conversation. You brought some really good things up, and it was a fun exercise going through the core values. But today we're going to apply it one step further, and we're going to connect it to relationships and marriage, right?
And it's more than core values. So core values are awesome. And so we're going to dig into core values, but even more so, listening to the last one, I'm always critical of myself. There's so much content in 30 minutes, right? And we really talk about it for probably 20 to 25. And my feeling is when I have conversations with people, using real life examples, for instance, with themselves or someone close, and for everyone, relationships are probably the easiest one to apply V cubed core values being, and then the other part of it is not just holding your core values, but what value are you giving off, and are you being valued by others, and how to simply how to take the formula and understand how to unwind it simply and apply it to yourself and better your life and better your relationships. So this really is about bettering your relationships. And the best example is what we know best, and that's our significant others. I mean, we know our kids, but they're growing up, and the most intimate person is your significant other or a significant other that you had in your life. So, I mean, my goal in this is it will be a great conversation, and I can't wait to hear more about Tom and to talk about our learnings, but hopefully those listening can hear the examples and use it as a simple tool in bettering their own relationships and honoring, how do you take honoring core values deeper than, oh, wasn't that fun? We did this little exercise. Now, how do you apply it to make it better?
Right. Well, and I think even going through the exercise demonstrates how you are valuing the other person in the relationship by just going through this exercise of sharing your values, and it expresses how you do value that person.
And the hard part is actually valuing them for it in practice, in day-to-day practice, because sometimes, what I usually see is couples will use it as a joke. Oh, I do this all the time. He's the linear thinker. I'm all out there, and I can make how he organizes things and some of these things that are of value for him, I can make them into a joke because it's opposite of me. And even though it's a joke, but we still do value some of these differences. And, but it's challenging ourselves to recognize something that's not innately us for those values that aren't the same is a great thing for us. That's a hard thing for a human to do, is to recognize something that is completely different from them and see its worth and be able to compare and contrast it to yourself and see how that actually helps you when it's something that isn't innately yours.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd love to know at the end of this, the thought that's been going through my mind too is you hear so many different rules of thumb, and I'll just use the easy ones for couples. You know, you got to find somebody who's just like you, 2 peas in a pod. And then you hear opposites attract, and it's so much better opposite. What really makes for the perfect relationship in the couple? And is it opposites that attract? Is it finding somebody like you? Or is it, what is the real depth behind that? And what makes that tick? And that's been an interesting thought for me, because I get different feedback for my relationship with my husband, Garrett. I have some people that will say, you two are exactly the same. You're the same. I have a sister-in-law who says, you're the same person, just in different bodies. And I have other people that say, how did you two get together? You're completely different. We hear that more in work when we work together, that we bring different things to the table. And I think that's so interesting that people have different views of same versus different. But I have a theory that it really comes down to complementary values, not the same values.
I think you're spot on. And there's some values that could be the same, but there's this complement of values, and also seeing the value in the other person's values, which I think you said that, like seeing the good in it. Because one of the things that Tom and I both had on our value was peace. And I I was thinking about that. Like, it's good that we both have peace, but we talked about this last time, it creates some blind spots because we're very good at keeping the peace. You know,
Amy, let's dig in. What were Tom's? Do you want to read off his values? I'd love to, for those.
I don't have all of his in front of me.
You don't have to have all of them, but maybe some. But back to the listeners, we broke down Amy's, and I think it'd be fun to go back. And one thing, there are a lot of core value exercises. You can go online. There's a Psychology Today that will help map them and give you the top 5. I've developed a template. And I think if we can add docs to our show notes, I'd be happy to put it out there for people to help come down to values. I've got cards, flashcards. There's all different ways to do it, but the key is to start with your core values. But there's a second step that is really important. It's one thing to have a list of words, but then to look at them and say, what are the themes? What if I were to cluster them together? Because you'll find themes, and usually there's usually about 3 themes, maybe 4, maybe 2. And the themes are really the secret sauce. The words are very powerful, but you can relate to those themes that you need to hold true to yourself. So what are some of Tom's? And then we'll throw out some of yours then too.
Okay, Tom, dependability, faith, family, flexibility, freedom, friendship, honesty, hope, love, loyalty, passion, service.
He had a lot in the beginning of the alphabet.
He did. I noticed that too.
That's funny because I'm like, oh, he's gonna have like 20. I gotta tell you, I love it that he has passion on there.
Oh, and happiness was one of his too.
Happiness, that's one of mine. So interesting. So we got dependability, faith, family. When you look at those, and did you have a conversation with Tom about these? And did you guys go through both of yours together?
We talked Sorry. We talked mostly about his.
Okay.
I dug in a little bit on his and, like flexibility. Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, what's that mean? What's that? And it was about work flexibility and having the opportunity to have time.
And some autonomy with what he's doing.
Right.
Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
being able to do things. And I'm going to throw out here some of Amy's. She had dependability, family, gratitude, health, hope, uh, independence, inner peace, inner strength, learning, mindfulness, peace. But when we had grouped yours, some themes that came out were meaningful relationships, personal well-being, growth, calmness. I think that was another one that you said were very resonant. Um, and what's interesting, if you look at Tom's, I mean, were there groupings that jumped out to you with Tom's core value?
Relationships. I
Relationship.
think that kind of jumped out to me.
Relationships. And then, there's the service, dependability, family. It's as much of him having relationships as him being, those ring to me as being very responsible in his part in the relationship. It'll be interesting when we dig in. The V cubed includes valuing others, or reciprocating the same thing. You have to do the same to others as you wish to have done to you. There's a reciprocal effect, and that's already embedded in Tom's core values, is that reciprocal part, right?
Right. Right.
And do you see that? Is that a natural Tom thing, that it's important for him to give equally in a relationship?
Oh, yeah. 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 Completely.
But I've never, it's seeing that in the embedded in the core values. It's a theme. Yeah, there's certain themes you see a lot, like growth and inner peace, and things that come out with Garrett. He had, and back to similarities, I had a lot of my core values go around relationships. But Garrett had humanity and self-improvement and growth. And then for him, it was deep relationships, more similar to yours, and peace.
Yeah.
Um, so very, very interesting. And when you meet someone, you're not going to say, give me your core values, you find those things out over time, and going through an exercise like this really gives you more of a deep dive into what that is. Now, last week we talked about, and a couple of things I'll bring up from our last conversation. I thought of it with you, Amy, when you said Tom has flexibility in his list. What does that mean? And I had fun, and Garrett's just like, it's their values that did not strike either you or Garrett as top of your list. Like, that wouldn't be something valued, but back to valuing somebody else. It's like, wow, that's just, I get where he's coming from. Family, totally. Faith, but flexibility. What does this mean? It's
Right.
understanding.
It was understanding because it could mean different things for everybody.
Right.
Well, and I kept thinking about it. I was like, I'm assuming that I understand family, like, because it's also one of mine, but I didn't ask the question and dig into it. It could mean something completely different. And I think that is something to keep talking about, to figure out exactly what they all mean. Here's my question for you is, do these evolve? Like, are your values when you're 20 the same as they are when you're 50? And I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask you this.
I think I believe your core values are innate, like the ones that are always going to be towards the top of the list. And then there are going to be some that you don't even know because of maturity. Would I have said integrity when I was 15 years old? I probably would have said trust, right?
Right.
Um, I think your very innate core values, like my example would be for me, fun, creativity, adventure, they didn't just come out of nowhere. And that kind of gets back to child's play. So I think you've got this nestle of very core that are always there, and that's your DNA. And then nurturing expands the list into things through experience and maturity and age you found to be more important and appreciate more. Um, but I don't think it just completely turns upside down. I think there's a nurturing part to it and an expansion. Is that
Okay.
what were your thoughts on it?
Good answer. Because I was curious, because I was thinking about health. Like health is one of mine that I highlighted, but historically, over my whole life, I wouldn't say that that's been a priority. I've done a lot of things in my life that haven't supported my health, like, well, drinking, eating, whatever it is. Like, it's
Right.
not like a constant, like, oh, my health is number one priority. And I was thinking about it and I was like, well, health, like, I think of one of my friends, she's a personal trainer. And I would say health is one of her core values. I look at her, she's always eating well, as much as she can, because
Mhm.
she, to me, that is a core value of hers. And so I was like, so is my health, like, has it always been a core value? Am I just doing it because I think it should be my core value? Is it almost um, aspirational? I would say as a core value. Does that make sense?
It
What my
totally
question
makes
is?
sense. And I would tell you, and there are different things that can impact that. Health, I think, is a great example because things can happen in your life. I think our values expand with experience. I think our
Right.
core is kind of our core, you know. I don't think you are looking for peace. You're probably a pretty peaceful child too, right?
Yeah.
Back to
Oh,
that
yeah.
child's play exercises, that actually helps you get back to your core because honoring your core values and living them brings the most happiness. And before you have interruptions, you can get back to that core and then they're expanded on through experience. Integrity, working in the business world, bad experiences, good experiences, relationships, that evolved that way. Family,
Good.
that they've always been there, but they've expanded. Now, interesting with your friend, since we're digging into relationships, I think the health is a great example. And some people, and the reason I say health is a great example, because some people would look at that and say, now, why would you have health at the top? Okay. That's kind of one of those that some people put, like passion, another one that some people put out there that isn't the norm for most people. I have experienced women that if somebody does have a core value of health, physical well-being, right?
Mhm.
If they don't have it or it's not the top of their list, they can diss that other person. Oh, gee, can't you be thin enough? I mean, women can be each other's worst enemy. And I've seen women that are very careful about what they say because they're not valued for that. Instead, they're put down in little ways. And part of it might just be like, get over yourself. You don't have to work out today. Or, oh, of course, so and so is only going to have 2 glasses of wine. But it's friendships and relationships. That sounds like an easy example, but how often, because somebody is the outlier or we don't really understand why it's a value or it's not a value to us, that we don't value or reciprocate that to them. We don't honor that as something that's important to them. And it doesn't
Interesting.
say you have to applaud them, but there are these little things,
Mhm.
that make us unique as human, and it's part of us.
Right. I'm just sitting here thinking of this group of women that I meet with monthly, and we have good discussions, really good discussions. And that situation you were describing, where not valuing other people's core values, like if, looking at somebody and, being a little passive aggressive about what they're eating or whatever. And I'm sitting here in gratitude thinking of them and thinking that we have never done that to each other, which, and we've all been in different situations. Like we're all going up and down on our scales. We're all going up and down and our relationships, we're all over the place on what's happening in the moment. And thankfully, there are a group of people that are supportive and honoring of wherever we are
which is a
when we're
great
there.
example of why you continue to get together,
Yeah.
why it's important and you'd never question, why am I putting time to this? That it,
Right.
because you're honoring each other, you're embracing each other for differences. And, there's a lot of samenesses too, but it's back
Yeah.
to that, we're supposed to talk more about our spouses. We're talking
I
about
know.
friendships.
Yeah.
But is it because, let's talk about that, two peas in a pod versus opposites attract. Let's just talk
Yeah.
about your group of friends. Do you feel like you're eclectic group, or do you feel like there, what do you feel like is the mix of the similarities versus differences?
Very similar. I'll just say that very similar. We all have same age-ish children,
Mhm.
same age range. We're all same faith. We're all, uh, you know, living in West Omaha. We're all we're all very, very much same. There's a lot of diversity backgroundish, like where we're from and where education and things like that. But we all have college degrees too.
And if you
So,
were to guess, what would you think on core values among the group?
oh my gosh, core values, family. Family is a core value. Uh, Faith is probably a core value.
Do you think there's a
Uh,
lot of differences though too?
yes, I would say some differences. I will say there's a lot of differences because when we dig into issues, and this is what I like about the group, when we dig into things, we all think about them differently and we approach them differently. So I do think there's a lot of diversity in thought and what our experiences have led us to. Like, one of the women in the group teaches high school students, and another one is an elementary counselor. And then, um, there's just this whole range, but their experiences also bring something, I think, very much to the group.
And I think you just gave a core example of, back to what we talked about in the beginning, it's a blend of opposites, and because no two people, even
Yeah.
twins, aren't exactly
Right.
alike, different,
Yeah.
but having shared experiences, you're getting eclectic backgrounds, but having shared experiences and shared points in your life, and there's a lot to be said for the similarities that you can help each other, but there's a lot to be said for the differences. But the key is in valuing both, right?
Right. Right.
In the perspective.
And I think you're right on that. Also, when we go back to marriages, it's the same thing. I think there's got to be some differences because if you
Right.
think the same and you're completely the same, I don't know, it sounds kind of boring.
It does. And I think for the person who says, she said this many times, you two are the same person. Sandy married the same person. I think it's because we are so aligned when we're together and it comes off that way. Does that make some sense? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just so interesting that some people will say you're so different, and work is a good example because there we're typically training together, right? We're developing something, and I'm more the people, the soft hands, I'm figuring out the big picture business problem with personalities, whereas Garrett is very technical and he's good with people too, but they're going to go to him if it's a highly technical problem. They're going to come to me if there's a little bit more emotion with it, or I don't understand. I feel stupid and I don't understand. What am I, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who say you're different. And it's just so interesting the perspectives that people give. But I think part of it is when we're with other couples, if you're rowing the same direction, and it's not made up. You can't make up that chemistry of understanding each other. And I think even the chemistry of valuing each other, because I'm not putting him down. I'm not, we all know what it's like to be by a couple when one's trying to form one into somebody she or he is not. When one doesn't agree, we've all been in those conversations. We can almost pick up on it immediately. And I think I've got a good bullshit meter for it because, I've had it both ways, right? And I'm not picking on my ex-husband, but I'm just saying there's a reason we got divorced. And it wasn't just him. It was a valuing back and forth. It was, you could dissect, V cubed and find it 100 different ways, but knowing both ways, I can recognize it in others too.
Right.
Which it makes for a better conversation when it's somebody you're close to, because you can start unpacking it a little bit with them and helping them unpack the V cubed.
Yeah. So I was thinking about one of mine values that I wrote down, and it was mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of going through it because it was kind of like the health one. I was like, is this aspirational? So I will tell you, I try to be very intentional about mindfulness. I was sitting here this morning thinking about it because it was quiet. I got up, I was having my coffee, and I was just sitting there in the quiet, the calm, and kind of processing my day. And I was like, oh, I just don't do this every morning. And I was thinking, so this mindfulness, is it a value of mine? Because I think it's important, but I'm not quite there all the time. I don't know.
I don't think having a value and having it perfected are two different things.
Okay. Thank you.
Sometimes we perfect things that aren't even values because it's easier to perfect. Right. So values we have to work on, but we know we're out of kilter. Here's what I tell you, Amy. If you're not being mindful and you're like, I'm just feeling off. Okay. And you go back and look at it and say, man, I have not been doing mindfulness. It is a value because it affected you. If I put mindfulness on my list because Amy told me about it and I think, wow, I need to do more of that. And then I get into a funk. Garrett and I like to use the word funk, our happiness factor goes low. I'm in a funk and I unwind it. And it really isn't, maybe I thought I practiced, it really doesn't impact it or doesn't matter. Then it's just something I think I should have perfected.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the comment that these are all things we can be working on. It's not like we have to have them all perfected, because that gives you permission to value things that aren't perfect in your life.
And it's back to, it's not just one thing. It's not just core values, it's core values. Then it's living your values in the situations, the relationship, how you spend your time. Are you honoring them, and are you using them and bringing your best experience and value forward? And then are you getting valued for it? But if you are perfecting your core values, which some people might come pretty darn close. I would tell you, Garrett's pretty bucky about his values, and he's very self-aware when they're off, and he knows to tweak them. He knows, whereas I have to kind of do a little bit more reflection to get there. And because of that, he tends to be focus on them more.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's good self-awareness. I think that's.
And honestly, maybe, of course, I'm probably not giving myself the benefit either. I know what mine are too. And he knows what mine are. And he'll be like, we need to, I used the example last week. We went to dinner. He has a million things going on. He's super busy. One quick thing we need from each other every day for him, it is investing time in our relationship. And so for him, it would have been the conversation we had over dinner. And even though it was just dinner, investing that hour into having a conversation and relationship. And that's part of his inner peace. That's part of his inner peace word, back to how the words are different things. Yeah. And, using my fun adventure, I have pleasure on mine. Okay. I like to feel good. Sorry, sorry, not sorry. Right.
That's okay.
he knew as we were leaving, as much as I enjoyed that, that I liked the spontaneity. And that's when he looked across the street and he said, we've always talked about going to that distillery. And we literally went over there and had one drink, but they had historic pictures on the wall. And we talked to the bartender and we heard the history and what did they make and how did they sell it. And it was, maybe we were there for half an hour, but it was just that little bit of what I needed to just to honor my core values and to find that little piece of fun and pleasure on top of spending quality time with each other. And we were done. We were home.
Yeah. So I also appreciate you saying sorry, not sorry around your core values, because that's kind of the attitude we need to have about them, because there's good in every single one of them. There's good in every single of these core values.
But we have to be honest, because you said it last week and I've said it myself. When you look through all of them, we will innately look at a few of them and say, oh my gosh, does somebody really have that as a core value?
Right.
And we have to catch ourselves because they're doing the same for us for a few different things. Some people will be, but they're all
Completely.
values. You know,
Right.
they're all values. Not to be, if somebody wants to win, does not make them a bad person. If
Right.
somebody, it is, attractiveness is important to them, that's not a bad value just because it's something we don't have as a top value or don't fully understand. Because if it's the worksheet talks about what are the three categories, Amy? Very important to me, not important at all, and somewhere
slightly important. Yeah.
It falls in the not important to me at all. Those tend to be the ones that you're like, I don't get this at all. I tell you, one challenge I would make is for people to do the exercise and look at the ones that they said don't matter to me at all and try to think about people that they matter to and see if you judge them, or if you have valued them for those things, or if you've judged them on that, or if at times you've negatively impacted a relationship for your lack of understanding them.
Good question. So it's funny because I put beauty as slightly important. And I'm just going to tell you, I struggle with this one because I will be the last person to post a bad picture of myself. And so that makes me think that it's slightly important, if not really important.
Right.
Because I'm very aware of, like, if we
take
a family picture, I know, but if we take a family picture, I'm going to make sure the picture that I get fixed or keep is going to be one that I look good in. So I don't know.
There's nothing the matter with that. But I say
it's a little vain.
Well, any value, don't mistake value for bad decision making or bad choices, right?
Right.
Because any of these, I like to have fun. So it's perfectly fine that I got drunk and, blah, blah, blah. It was fun. If it feels good, it can't be bad. No, a core value is a key to what brings you happiness. And it is a key to what motivates and brings out the best in you to give the world. And
right.
and they're related.
And so I know we need to wrap this up, but I'm going to say core values are about valuing yourself. They're not about measuring other people against your core values. I think that's kind of the key here, is it's about how you value yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay. So what's our challenge today? Do you have a challenge for us?
You know what? I think a great challenge would be to identify your core values and pick either your significant other or a close relationship and have them do the same. Have a conversation.
It's a great exercise. I will say that. Thank you for asking me to do that with Tom. It was kind of eye-opening. It was good.
It brings some questions too, back to, what does this mean to you? Because they're just words, right? What does this mean to you? And wow, how did this get on your list? And I thought we both had that one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Sandy. And we can try to post the list. Yesterday or last week. Okay.
Oh,
I'm going to say thank you, Sandy. Last week, I posted the online test that you had shared with me to get down to some values. We'll see if we can post this.
we could do a PDF, right? Can we do a PDF?
I don't think we can.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to, I'll see.
Or I could put a link at my website too. We could do that.
Okay. Whatever
Yeah,
you
we
want
will
to do.
figure it out off. We are good.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Sandy, for the conversation and good luck with the challenge this week, everybody.
Perfect. Bye, Amy.
Bye.